If you're listening on the podcast, be sure to jump back to the previous episode to listen to the first half of this conversation. Come back here for part 2.
Welcome to the Building Doctor Show with Jens Johansson.
All right, claims process and what to expect. And this applies to anything, any kind of claim you're making, but talking about flood insurance here. So first 24 to 48 hours, safety first, understand electrical hazards, structural integrity. Is the building safe to be in? Is there anything that could cause further damage? Did the power pole get knocked over and it's arcing and zapping? Okay, then document everything. Photos, videos, before cleanup, during cleanup, after cleanup, during construction. Just document everything. Make sure you have photos of everything. Even now, before the event, before the flood, walk around your house with your phone on video, and you just, yep, here we go. I'm just walking through the kitchen. And then you can slow that down later and say stainless steel GE dishwasher. And you can kind of make your list if something gets wiped out. And then, of course, contact your insurance carrier immediately. Get in line, get a claim number, ask for an adjuster to come out, visit the laws, assess the laws, and then begin water removal and drying process quickly. We've got about 72 hours before mold and things start becoming a problem. So that's back to these water extraction services, lots of them out there. And then make sure you save all your receipts for emergency expenses. And here's my hotel, here's my meal, remember these ALE, additional living expenses. And so save those receipts, take a picture of them. So then communication strategy for boards. Hey, maybe designate a flood response coordinator. That here's how we're working on this. Here's how these claims are being handled. We have filed a claim with our flood insurance adjuster or insurance company, and here's this update, kind of giving people some update, or here's the adjuster's number and email. Your insurance policy can reach out to them. So we got this resident communication system, coordinating with local emergency management, documenting all decisions and expenses. So again, this is claims process in general. Just do this stuff, but especially in a flood event. Okay, so the best practices. In a big flood event, remember we have our master policy, our individual policy that covers normal stuff. Then we have a flood policy. Maybe just the master has a flood insurance thing. Maybe some individuals have not bought an individual flood insurance policy. Maybe some have. So now we have 4 insurance policies times how many units you have. So this is where we need a clerk of the works, so to speak. So hire a consultant, a public adjuster. Believe it or not, there are insurance experts that can really help you coordinate these things. Maybe your management company has a insurance loss, designated person that knows how to communicate back and forth. So these become complex and large. And so full-time job for somebody for 3 months, right? So then get independent damage assessments from bidders, keep all the records of the communications, understand your policy requirements completely. Obviously, you don't have to read them too much after you buy them, but when it gets down to nitty-gritty time, we really need to understand what our policies cover. Promptly notify and coordinate with your insurance company to assist them with their adjustment of damages. Their insurance adjuster is adjusting the claim with an adjustment of damages. That's where the title comes from. So stay on top of them to get your project finished. They're busy like everybody else. And if a big flood has come through, they've got all your neighbors they're dealing with. FEMA or National Flood Insurance Programs are usually slow to pay, right? It's a government system, and they only have so much, and first come, first serve, right? So I'm just saying, get this done, get it happening, make it a priority, dedicate somebody to do this, and then watch out for the kitchen table settlements. And so what do I mean by that? So in any kind of big disaster, the adjusters that come in, they actually, in the industry, they call them storm troopers. And so they're storm adjusters. They fly them in. They're busy. And what kitchen tabletop settlement is, I see your loss, and it's, hey, would you take $50,000? Oh wow, that sounds like a lot of money. Sure, I'll take that. Here, let's sit down at the kitchen table, sign this release, and I'll write you a check, because they don't want to process all the losses and update all the stuff. And if they can get you to settle for an agreed upon amount, they will. So their duty is to pay the claims on what you agree with. And so oftentimes I've heard many stories of, hey, I got this big check waved in my face. I thought I could do it. And then I've got actual bids, because what do the contractors do? The contractors swarm in with guys in the back of their pickup bed, because it's lots of people want some work done, and I can raise my rates and I can get to work. I don't know if they call them stormtroopers too or not, but you get the idea. People are taking advantage of the system. So now the bids are higher, and this check, I agreed to get a check, maybe doesn't cover it. But the one positive of that, I have my check. All my neighbors are waiting on the claims to be adjusted, the paperwork to be filed, the people to finish their estimates, and all this stuff. I can start rebuilding right now. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying just review them carefully. All right. Prevention, building level flood prevention. So we've got structural improvements, and we've got maintenance to prevent this stuff. So the structural improvements are proper grading and drainage around your buildings. Go outside, walk around your building tonight. If the site goes like this and your building's in the bottom of it, that's a nice bowl, right? If there's anything we can do to change the landscaping to slope the water away from my building, and that's rainfall, and that's any kind of flood coming down the street, I don't want to flow uphill. I can flow downhill into your neighbor's property. So grading and drainage. And then drainage would be, all buildings have foundation or footing drains outside them. Are those in good shape? Or are they filled with leaves and pine needles and things like that? That gets into your site drains. Some sites have, there's a grate out in the middle of the lawn. Where does that go? Is it full of junk? Has it been cleaned out in the past 20 years? Will water flow into there and be whisked away to the right place? And so figuring these things out, making sure your sump pumps and backup power systems are working. A lot of times the power goes out if it's a big flood or any kind of other disaster. So make sure your backup generators are working. Have you gone through this? So this is kind of part of your maintenance checklist to check. Flood barriers and water resistant materials. So exterior foundation walls, you may have below grade units, they're called. So 3 feet is below grade and the windows are kind of above. That's called a half a unit, or a first floor unit, or below grade unit. Maybe you're built into a hillside, so part of the unit is below grade. Well, if there's any below grade portion of the unit, and we've got a high water table, or we've got kind of some surface water and it's finding its way through the cracks in the foundation, make sure your waterproofing and your drainage or drain material is working correctly. And then kind of check on your utilities and mechanical systems. Not that you're going to relocate your boiler room, but is there any way to, or maybe it's elevated and it would get wiped out in a flood surge and fall over. So kind of look for those things. Are my utilities going to work? Is my foundation going to work? Is the site drainage working for me or against me? And then are my sump pumps and drain system working? So maintenance, again, storm drain cleaning, roof and gutter maintenance, foundation crack monitoring, repair, landscape management for proper water flow. So a lot of buildings have what's called negative slope towards the building. And so anything we can do you can regrade your lawn, you can regrade your landscaping and keep that water away. So a little bit of community planning. What can you do? You can develop an emergency response plan, having kind of these evacuation procedures, emergency contact, flood barrier, coordination with local emergency services, resident education, going through a little bit of individual flood preparedness, understanding the insurance responsibilities is the big one, of just either requiring them to have flood insurance, making sure that maybe the master policy covers that, or we're going to go ahead and cover it as a master policy and raise the dues to cover that. So at least we have something. Emergency supply recommendations, things like that. Financial planning, again, reserves. How's your reserves doing? We've had several episodes on getting your reserves up to a healthy amount. If you don't have anything, there's going to be some special assessments for some of these improvements. Insurance deductible planning, is that a line item on your budget or is that in your reserves? Sometimes these deductibles are kind of big. And then maybe there's some federal grant opportunities that you can work on. So here's some planning that you can do as a board and as a committee, or just as a resident. All right, so key takeaways. Water intrusion or water damage coming from your building or the rain is usually covered under your master policy. Flood insurance is totally separate. So your standard insurance policy does not cover flood damage or flood events. So regional risks are real. Pacific Northwest, Mountain West have specific flood challenges. Gully washers rain all the time. They're different for how you in what part of the country you live in. That 30-day rule. Remember, this is something you plan for. You don't wait for the weather forecast. And then prevention and insurance. So both are necessary for complete protection, and just really that making sure that you've got all those different levels and all those different policies working together, not overlapping, but working together for you, because you'll have denial from this, you'll have coverage from that, but I don't cover that, but that's covered under this, and I can get coverage back around through these policies, and you're kind of connecting the dots and tying everything together. All right, your 30-day action plan. Google your flood zone and assess your current coverage. Are you in a flood zone? Is there a river, lakes not so much, but is there a river nearby? Is there a dam? Is there a water? What do you call those? Transferring water, not viaducts, but aqueduct. Could that break? Could that flood things? Understand that. And then consult with an expert. Get flood insurance quotes from both the national plan and private insurers, and understand the difference. Quotes are free, right? And so we can see the difference. We can understand it and make a decision. And then review and approve that emergency response planning. Here's kind of a whole new thing. Most properties do not have flood insurance that we see. And then you can start implementing these flood prevention things as we go into the rainy season. All right, you need some advice on your buildings, and this is the open advice line, or specifically insurance we're talking about. So we can help with your building. It's a free 15-minute call. If you like to type, go to learn.j2consultant.com/consultant on call. Otherwise, click the QR code and that'll take you to my calendar to set up a time. And this is where we talk about anything. Or you watch the Building Doctor show and you enter your question in the Q&A. So let's jump into Q&A. And we had 3 questions sent to us between shows. So we put this out and said, hey, put it on your calendar. And so we started getting a bunch of questions about flood insurance. So first one, if we do get hit with flood damage, who actually handles the claim? The HOA board or individual unit owners? And what happens if our master policy doesn't cover everything? Are we as homeowners stuck with special assessments on top of our own flood claims? So who's going to handle the claim? The adjuster from your flood policy is going to determine your flood insurance coverage amount, but you're going to have other policies involved. And so is this covered under this? Is it covered under that? They've denied me. They haven't. They might pay. They might not. And so consider a consultant or insurance claims expert that can be kind of a clerk of the works of this. Sometimes those costs are reimbursed because they understand that there is a lot of flying loopholes here. And sometimes your management company has a person that's dedicated to this type of stuff too. So for any damage that's not covered by insurance policies, you have to pay. And so is that payment in the form of your reserves? So another good reason, remember we say 50 to 70% reserve balance. Got some money. That's what it's for, this weird event. Or if you don't have reserves, you're going to have an assessment. And so they'll have another assessment to deal with. But the hope is that you have proper flood insurance policy coverage to pay for that. And it's done. Just like a fire or any kind of toilet overflow that you have in your normal policy. But additional assessments are a risk. Okay, next question. We're located near a creek that's been dry for the past few years due to drought conditions. Some board members think this means we're at a lower risk now, but I've heard that drought can actually make flooding worse when rains do come. Is that true? And how should that factor into our decisions? So again, it depends on the soil. So a creek bed usually has sand and rocks in the bottom of it. And maybe it's a little drier summer and it's dried up, or a couple of summers in a row and it's dried up. It'll likely percolate again, or meaning the water will soak through the stream bed and continue to act like a stream bed. If it's dry, hard, and been baked in the sun for 3 years, now we start kind of taking on this porcelain look. So go down a stream bed and scratch around with your shoe or stick and just see. So this, remember we talked about it in the forest fires where we see actual baked hard dirt because of the heat. Maybe the clay stream bed could do that as well. And so in that case, water is going to flow right through it instead of draining down into the aquifer or whatever that's underneath the stream. So, ultimately, these are risk or business decisions that you have to make. Climate change, things are getting drier, or weather patterns are changing. Let's call it that. And so what used to be a wet flowing creek is now kind of dried up and not flowing as much. So maybe your risk has gone down. You already have a creek bed, so any surface runout water will go in there and hopefully follow the creek bed until that overflows. So creek is different than river. Creek, maybe I'm not so worried about. River, a little more worried about. I don't think there's flood zone maps around every creek. So I would, make that decision, but it depends on the soil there. And let's see, last. We are looking at a major building renovation project next year. New siding, windows, maybe some foundation work. Should we wait to get flood insurance until after the improvements are done, or does it matter? And will these improvements help lower our flood insurance costs? The only thing I would say there is foundation work. So, but typically improvements are factored into insurance premiums in a good light. But let's also pay attention to the flooding, and does flooding normally affect new windows? No, flooding would affect that foundation wall though. And so runoff, tidal surge, things like that. So if you're doing some foundation work, maybe you're digging down and replacing that foundation drain or adding some more site drainage, waterproof your foundation. So if any water is getting onto it, it stays out. Fix those cracks, do that stuff. Generally, again, back to the insurance companies investigating properties. Does it look rotten or does it look new? If it looks new, hey, maybe my risk of a claim goes down. And so I would probably say do it afterwards. But again, flood can come at any time. So depending on the time of your, but so I guess I would say, is a flood going to come in the summer? Probably not so much. So if my building repairs are going to occur over this winter, building will look nice and new by the time I get flood insurance in the summer. But I'm headed into the winter. So do I want to fix that foundation now or have flood insurance coverage for those cracks or, conditions that could cause that? So that's how I'd think about that. But flood insurance probably isn't going to care about new windows and siding, because that isn't the thing that's stopping the flood or the city from flooding, so to speak. All right. So then we go over to questions from this show. Okay. If we experience flood damage and file a claim, will our premiums skyrocket, or could we even lose our coverage altogether? Oh, interesting. So if we experience flood damage, so we have flood damage and we file a claim, will our premiums go up or could we lose coverage? So this would be flood insurance policy. Your premiums aren't going to go up till next year if they do. Your premium going up, usually, we had a previous show about this and the insurance premiums and why they go up or not. They're a function, they're kind of a bigger function of the business unit itself and the area. So the 2 or 3 insurers that were in Florida last year with all the hurricanes, yeah, their insurance rates went up over every possible insurance policy they had, and they paid out a lot of money, and then maybe they're not offering insurance in Florida anymore. So those are the reasons why they would lose coverage of we're moving out of Florida. We're not offering insurance coverage here. So typically premiums don't skyrocket after a claim, and typically you don't get canceled after a claim or not renewed. But it's up to the insurance company. But the takeaway, I buy flood insurance and I pay flood insurance premiums to use my policy. And that's what everybody's agreed to. They've agreed for this much a month, I will pay out that potential thing. And so I would definitely use it if I had it and use it if I had damage, because that's what it's there for. So if they change, there could be several other reasons why they would change or raise costs. So good question. All right. Did you know we have lots of additional training here? So you can either, if you like typing, learn.j2consultants.com/resources or use the QR code. You'll see a whole bunch of training and seminar stuff and YouTube videos and all these things all in one place, which is pretty nice. Here's another way to find everything that we do on one page. Use the QR code again, as all the content. Sign up for all the stuff. And then be sure to stream this wherever you go. New episodes twice a month on all your favorite platforms. And again, do us a big favor. Rate us 5 stars wherever you hear us. That's our fuel to produce more for you. Leave something in the chat and thumbs up and subscribe and hit all those bells. Appreciate you. Thanks for learning about flood insurance, and stay safe out there. So, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.
This podcast is part of J2's free live webinar, The Building Doctor Show. To attend the live show and ask your questions during the Q&A, visit www.j2consultants.com.